Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's version of the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'm Chris Carosa, your host, and today we've got a very interesting dialogue with two historians about Erie County. Erie County is celebrating its bicentennial. We're going to learn a little bit about the early history of Erie County and, what's more exciting, what you can do right now to help celebrate the Erie County Bicentennial. You're listening once again to the Greater Western New York Report, and it's brought to you by...
Imagine yourself communicating with a difference. Pan-Dimensional Solutions helps you do this. Whether live spectator events, taped broadcasts, or real-time audience-engaging programs, you can benefit immediately from the tools Pan-Dimensional Solutions will share with you. Do you want to make a difference? Contact us at pandimensional.com. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa. Hi there, and welcome again to this week's version of the State of Greater Western New York Report. We've got two wonderful guests who we really appreciate showing up today. Both of them are historians, and both of them are involved with Erie County. They are Melissa Brown, who's the executive director of the Buffalo History Museum, and Doug Kohler, who is the Erie County historian. They're going to be talking to us about a couple of things. We're going to start out with the history of Erie County. Before we do that, let me have them introduce themselves, because that's always a fair thing to do. Melissa, you actually are very special, Melissa. Do you know why?
I don't know why.
You don't know why? Because you are the first returning guest on the State of Greater Western New York Report. So I know you talked a little bit about yourself.
Know that.
Yeah, congratulations. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself now, and let the audience know what you do and where you do it.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. I am very honored to be a repeat guest. I am the director of the Buffalo History Museum, and I have been here for 23 years, serving as director for the last 10. But as you indicated, my background is in history, particularly local history. And so it's been truly an honor to serve the museum in many different capacities over the years, and also get to know more my own local history, having grown up in there. Thank you.
All right. And Doug, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on this afternoon. So like Melissa, my interest is in local history and has been for a number of years. I teach at Clarence Middle School. So I've been working with seventh graders for over 30 years. And one of the things that we do is to really focus on local history. We do a project so that they get out and actually do history in their communities. And that sort of led me into interest, some special interests, especially starting with the War of 1812. And then by hook and by crook, one day I called the county executive's office to ask if we could have access to the county historian. And a former student of mine who was the chief of staff called back and said, "We don't think there's a county historian, but we would be interested in talking to you." And the rest, I guess we could say, is history. I've been the county historian for the last 10 years. It goes side by side with what I do. It's teacher by day, county historian by every other waking moment. But it's just such a great experience to get to tell the stories of Erie County and Western New York that people may not know.
Thanks a lot, Doug. And you know what? You talked about the War of 1812. Let's start with the very beginning of the history of Erie County, which, as people might not know yet, started before there was even an Erie County. Why don't you give us a start on how did all things begin around here?
Yeah, I think, and actually, we talk about Erie County. We talk, we'll talk in a couple of minutes about the War of 1812. But, Melissa and I feel very strongly that it's important to remember that this actually goes, back beyond that. That this is actually land that belonged to the Haudenosaunee, that they were here first, and we go back to the last ice age. and the Paleo Indians who came at that time and eventually gave way to the Haudenosaunee culture. And this land, was theirs first. And so, we have here the map that shows the reservations. And that's an important thing to remember, that as we look at, the history of Erie County, Western New York, it isn't just that the Native Americans were here. It's that the Native Americans still are here. And this land that was significant to them thousands of years ago remains culturally significant to them to this day. And so, as settlers moved in, that was one of the issues in beginning to establish governmental structures in this part of the state, was making agreements and treaties with the Native Americans. And then once those were established, then you get first Niagara County. So very often we miss the point that when the first settlers came, and starting in 1808, when Albany sort of looked west to where we are, it was to establish Niagara County. And it was 3 towns. 2 of them still exist. So in the north, you had Cambria, what is today Niagara County. That was all the town of Cambria. The northern part of Erie County was Clarence, from what is we think of as the city, all the way across to Newstead. You had the Buffalo Creek Reservation in the middle, as we just saw with that map. And then the entire southern portion of what was Niagara County at that point ran from the creek, from Buffalo Creek and the reservation, down to Cattaraugus Creek. And so that's where it's all, so it all starts. We're part of Niagara County in 1808. And so when the War of 1812 and even the beginnings of the canal take place, that's, it's part of us being Niagara County. The clerk is the Niagara County clerk. The sheriff is the Niagara County sheriff. So, we sort of miss that we grow out of that Niagara County beginning.
So let's talk a moment about the Seneca tribe, which is the tribe that inhabits the greater Western New York region today. Mm-hmm. Immediately after the Revolutionary War, the Seneca tribe was on the losing side. And most of the Iroquois did go up to Canada, but not the Seneca. Can you tell us what caused them to remain, and why maybe that was a bit of magnanimity on the part of George Washington? Why was it important for this new nation, the United States, to be friends with the Seneca Nation?
Yeah, that's a good question without a simple answer. The beginning of it is that at the end of the Revolution, we weren't strong enough to get the British to evacuate Fort Niagara, as they were supposed to have done in 1783 with the Treaty of Paris. So the simple answer is that as long as the British are here, the Seneca are very comfortable occupying their traditional lands. But you're right, with that power base that still exists for the Haudenosaunee in the Seneca Nation, it's important for the government, on the East Coast, for George Washington to establish relations, because that's the group that settlers moving into Western New York will have to deal with through treaties and trade as well. So, and of course, we've got the Red Jacket Peace Medallion that lived for so long at the History Museum that's just been repatriated.
So now this kind of leads up to the War of 1812. If perhaps you can elaborate on this, the western edge of the greater Western New York region, really at that point Niagara County, was kind of fuzzy. Who owned what? Did the British own it? Did the Americans own it? And this really wasn't resolved until the War of 1812. And how did the various parties play within our local region with regards to the War of 1812?
It's funny because as a seventh grade history teacher, my students, would love to go to Gettysburg or, Saratoga, and the big battlefields we talk about in the sweep of national history. But the reality is we can't. However, I always say I can have you on a War of 1812 battlefield in an hour, and they were no less significant to the War of 1812. I think we lose sight of its significance because in a textbook, if you've got to give space to the Revolution or the Civil War or the War of 1812, War of 1812 is going to lose out because it's a status quo ante thing. Nothing changes. But that doesn't diminish the role we played. We're the only area where the British and the Americans and the Canadians and the Native Americans fought for all of those years. We focus on the Chesapeake because that's Fort McHenry, the Star Spangled Banner, the burning of Washington. But the events are much more significant in a military sense here. And I think it's important to remember that war is fought here. We're the wilderness. This is the edge of civilization. So getting supplies, getting men, getting the army out here to the frontier is a big deal. And it draws on certainly the people of the region to provide some of those resources that the army is going to need. The other thing is that I look at the burning of Buffalo, which takes place in 1813, that we see here in the Raymond Massey photo, as really one of the key events. To me, I refer to it as an etch-a-sketch moment. It gives us a chance to sort of reset at the end of the War of 1812, because the canal is coming. It's something that had been talked about prior to the War of 1812, and the burning of Buffalo lets the citizens sort of reimagine the city in a way that will facilitate what's going to take, what the canal will need, so that Buffalo can be that western terminus, that golden point where canal boats meet lake freighters.
So, and this War of 1812 is a unique history of itself, and perhaps as December comes around and we approach yet again the anniversary of the burning of Buffalo, maybe we'll have you on again to talk more about that. But let's go right to the canal.
Thanks.
And the canal was a significant thing. It really established Buffalo as we know it today. Elaborate, which I don't know if you or Melissa is going to talk about the canal. Whoever's going to tell me more about the canal.
Melissa, do you want to jump in, or you want me to do it?
Either way, but I think I would just say, to your last point, Chris, there are several really interesting images from one of the survivors of the burning of Buffalo in the collection. So if you do want to follow up on that, Doug could certainly speak to them around that anniversary time. But with the canal, and I think this one, certainly, Buffalo was not a shoo-in for the western terminus of the canal. There was a lot of really fighting for that, to earn that right. And obviously everybody knew the significance that was at stake, and some couldn't even imagine what those possibilities were, especially as technology evolved. And so one of the stories that Doug has been working on, this image of canal side, and now that I think people are really hungry to understand what this truly sacred spot in our history represents. There are not, you can see what are left of ruins in this image at canal side, but there are not a lot of remnants of the built environment in this very many layered and nuanced history that happened at canal side. But people today that are going down there are really hungry to learn and understand more. And of course, we're going to be moving into the bicentennial of the anniversary of the Wedding of the Waters, and that symbolic union of west and east with the opening of the Erie Canal in 2025. So all of these discussions around the bicentennial are really important to build excitement and for people to understand how that revolutionized life really overnight with its opening.
Melissa, one of the things that I find intriguing is the role that Erie County played in the women's suffrage movement. Seneca Falls, Monroe County, they get a lot of their airplay with regards to that. Tell us a little bit about Erie County's position within this.
I think, like Doug said earlier, it's nuanced and it's multi-layered. And so the Western New York scene, particularly, I would say the Buffalo scene, doesn't really pick up until 1908, when the convention of the National American Women's Suffrage Association was in Buffalo. This particular piece that you're sharing, Chris, is from our collection. This is a famous piece by Evelyn Rumsey Carey, one of the most iconic posters relating to suffrage. But it was, the battle, many years, 1908 is many years after, the 1848 convention in Seneca Falls that some people know about. And it still was very much a vexing debate at that point. There were many women here in Buffalo who were still against suffrage and really felt that women were not in a position to make an informed vote and really shape the nation in that way. But at that same time, that energy, and because of the conference being here, it started to gain momentum, and certainly at that point, there was the momentum had built to a point where they were at the tipping point. So of course, New York is one of the earliest in the nation with suffrage in 1917.
That's fascinating. I grew up in Erie County, and I thought, I always pictured Monroe County, Susan B. Anthony, Seneca Falls as the key point. But you're right. Erie County is significant in this. Now we kind of skipped ahead a little bit chronologically, which is probably my fault because I didn't know anything. But let's talk for very, very briefly. We got about 30 seconds before our first break. About what I think might be the seminal moment. I know, Melissa, we talked about this previously.
Sure, the Pan Am.
On one of our other shows, but just relay very quickly why that was significant in helping build Buffalo as the jewel, the Queen City that it became.
Mm-hmm. I think this whole experience of the Bicentennial is really, as Doug mentioned, an opportunity to shed light on the nuance of local history and how complex. I mean, there's stories of the people, there's stories of the places, the interconnectedness of that. And certainly we see a culmination of that in the 1901 Exposition, nationally and locally. So for Buffalo, we were the 8th largest city in the United States in 1901. The population had essentially doubled with each decade coming out of the opening of the canal, and that's just an exponential growth. There was a lot of innovation here and industry that, particularly hydroelectric power and that connection between Niagara Falls and Buffalo, that really elevated Buffalo as a candidate to host this 1901 Exposition, and then ultimately did. And so, McKinley, I think, put it best, and we talked about this last time, Chris. Expositions are the timekeepers of progress, and these world fairs and expositions were meant to nationally showcase all the innovation and technology and advances at those times. So by the spotlight, figuratively and literally, being on Buffalo in 1901, a lot of people gained attention and awareness for the Queen City and its significance amongst the larger cities of the nation.
All right, Melissa, Doug, stay with us. We'll be going on a break right now, but we'll be coming back and talk about the Bicentennial itself and what are some of the events and activities going on in the Western New York region, in Erie County specifically. We'll be right back. Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com. Welcome back. I'm Chris Carosa on the State of Greater Western New York Report. With me today, Melissa Brown, the Executive Director of the Buffalo History Museum, and Doug Kohler, who is the Erie County historian. And guess what? It's a birthday, one of many that we celebrate. It's the bicentennial of the Erie County region, or the Erie County. So tell us a little bit. We're going to just go really quickly. I don't know who wants to ask it. Tell us a story about the beginning of Erie County. How did it start? Why did it start? When did it start? Who wants to handle that?
Melissa, do you want me to jump on this one?
Go for it, Doug. Yeah, Doug is already.
Yeah. So the official birthday of Erie County is April 2nd, 1821. And the question we always get is, why is it April 2nd? Wouldn't it have made more sense for it to be April 1st? So, of course, that leads into kind of the urban legend that, well, you know, the assembly in Albany didn't want it to be considered an April Fool's joke. So they moved it to April 2nd. And the reality is it had nothing to do with that. It was as simple as April 1st in 1821 fell on a Sunday. And so being 18, there was no way that municipal civil work would be done on a Sunday. And so it was bound over to the following day. So the official birthday of the county is on April 2nd. It just makes for an unusual kind of birthday celebration. But, it's been quite a while in the planning. Melissa and I have met with the county executive a number of years ago to begin to get these wheels rolling.
All right. And so we're celebrating the Bicentennial right now. It's already started. Let's talk about some of the events that have occurred and maybe a little bit about how the commission got together and how it decided what to do.
Yeah, I think, Chris, it's been a really, really wonderful gathering of our smaller heritage-based organizations throughout Erie County, inspired by our work around the bicentennial of 1812. A group of grassroots organizations had gotten together to do a lot for that. And so we, as Doug mentioned, we started meeting actually several years ago to gear up. And so now we have a real core group of about 30 organizations that are participating in all the planning meetings, but we have over 150 groups represented in our email list and helping coordinate activities. So Visit Buffalo Niagara, who's been a really strong partner in addition to Erie County itself, they are providing resources for us to create a community-wide calendar. So everybody who's having an Erie County Bicentennial event, or EC200, hashtag EC200, can join and learn more about what's happening throughout the community. One of the most significant initiatives is just really kicking off, and that is the Passport program. So if you go on to our website or the VBN calendar, you can gain more information about the Passport program, where essentially you can go and visit many of these different partner organizations throughout the summer and into the fall. And then at the end of the season, we will be having a redemption day where folks can come out. One of the days will be here at the museum and get a commemorative coin for going out and exploring history throughout Erie County. We really just want, and it's wonderful actually during this kind of coming out of the pandemic environment, for people to go out and really embrace these histories that are right in their own backyard. You talk about the hidden gems, Chris, and I'm sure there's some overlap there for people who just want to learn a little bit more about the stories that are right in our own backyard.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them, and they're great stories too. So tell us, here's a great story. And I like this. This is such a great idea. I don't know who thought of this. Tell us about the beer. Who wants to talk about the beer?
If you're talking about Western New York and the history of the area, German migration, Irish migration, back in the 1800s, Melissa can double check me, but I want to say there were at one point over 75 breweries running in the city in the 1870s, 1880s. So obviously, that was, that was a big thing historically. And interestingly, if you look at kind of the revitalization, the renewal of the area, a lot of it's tied into our history. You can look at architecture as a driver for heritage tourism, but then you can look at the prevalence of the microbreweries that have really re-energized areas like Larkinville and down at Canal side. So it was a logical connection for us to reach back into the history and to make that connection. And so Tim Herzog, who's the owner of Flying Bison, reached out to us and was willing to be a partner for us in this. And so he created what Flying Bison calls Parks and Rec Pilsner. You see it here in a beer glass with our logo on it at Flying Bison. And so it began brewing it in the winter, actually using hops from Erie County. We learn things as we go. There is a hops farm in the town of Eden, and Tim was able to secure some of those hops to use to brew in the Bicentennial Pilsner. And after it cured on May 14th, it was ready to go. And so he invited the Bicentennial Committee and anybody who wanted to be a part of it to Flying Bison in Larkinville. And County Executive Polenkars was given the honorary mallet that you see there on the table. And Mark actually, tapped the first keg and, sort of christened it. And that's really it's been a huge hit. Right now, Flying Bison is sold out of the on tap Bicentennial Pilsner. Tim is planning to drop another batch, I guess that's the right brewery term. And it's available right now at public distribution. So if you see it at your local supermarket, grab one, because that's some of the last currently available Bicentennial Pilsner. But we expect that towards the end of the summer, the next batch will be up and ready to go. And we'll see it at around and about as part of the commemoration that we're in the middle of.
As Homer said, beer, is it nothing it can't do? So, so let's go back to the map, the passport map. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the events that are occurring in and around the towns in Erie County? And if you want to both talk about it, I'll keep you both on the screen, and we could take it from there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Melissa, you want to start, and then I'll hop in.
All right, so I think one of the big marquee pieces, and we might have touched on this before, is we're opening a signature exhibit to discuss the history of Erie County, going all the way back before Erie County and the government lines, really, here at the History Museum. So that's going to open in October. The different partner organizations, I know, like Doug and I were just at Concordia Cemetery last weekend, where we had celebrated. They were able to write for a Pomeroy marker. So the Pomeroy Foundation across New York State does a great job in supporting historic marker designations and funding those. So they were able to get that designation for the cemetery. So that was one of the Erie County Bicentennial events. Up and coming, we're also, like, later into the fall, it's coming to mind on October 7th at Como Park. The Fall Festival will be rebranded for Erie County. The parks have been a wonderful partner for this. So as Doug mentioned, there's been some, and there will be additional pop-up beer events in the parks for the Bicentennial. And then we also, and Doug, I don't want to hog up the mic too much, but we have a series coming up at the Roycroft campus through the next, let's see, is it the third?
The last Wednesdays of
Wednesday.
June, July, August. Mm-hmm.
June, July,
and I think,
August.
the point was...
Go ahead, Doug.
Nope, you finished. I was just going to jump on back to something you said.
Okay, I was just going to say that the theme for those is really creating more access to diverse history and diverse stories in the county. So the first one is actually going to be with the Gay Men's Choir. It's an anniversary for them, and they'll be performing, and some of the LGBTQ history will be celebrated there. The second one is focusing on the trailblazing women of Western New York. That's a monument initiative to get more visibility for the women's history here. There's remarkably only, I think, 2 sculptures devoted to women in all of Erie County. And so that initiative is in an effort to change that. And there'll be a feature for that, of course, with the Roycroft about Alice and her history, particularly with the campus. That'll be actually expounded on at that event. And then the third, Alice Hubbard, that is. And then the third event in August will be for Michigan Street corridor and the history that's there. And the Uncrowned Queens initiative, the Uncrowned Community Builders, will be talking about the history and legacies that they've helped steward and continue to collect to share the remarkable contributions of African Americans in our community.
And I think,
Doug, I know you had another thought.
No, but it actually ties right in with that. So I think the point here is that there are standalone events. So like the series at Roycroft, but a lot of what we're doing is asking our partner organizations to rebrand events and to become partners with us, instead of inventing the wheel to make it the Bicentennial whatever. Become included on our calendar. We can help with the marketing piece for organizations that may not have that capacity built into their organizational structure, and it feeds into a growing, critical mass of bicentennial events. So it's kind of a grassroots thing where we populate with some specifically driven bicentennial events, but where largely it's the community says this is what we do, and we make that a part of this year-long celebration of who we are as Erie County.
We have, I know we talked about this because we had a committee meeting last night. I believe there are over 100 events that are listed right now on the community calendar through Visit Buffalo Niagara. So if people look there, they'll get a sense of all these different individual events, because some people are planning exhibit experiences that are, driven by their own local stories. Some people have, like Concordia, just have events. I think Concordia has another one in the fall that centers on the Civil War history and particularly Weidrich's unit. There are 15 soldiers buried there. So there's a lot of different opportunities. And I really encourage people to explore that website and, figure out what interests them.
Can you give us that website again, just so that people can write it down?
Sure. So it's www.erie.gov/EC200. And so if you get there, it'll have the links to the Visit Buffalo Niagara website. You also can just, Google essentially EC200, and you'll get both of those resources that will come up. And Chris, I'm happy to share those links, or Doug can share them. So you'll have them to share with your viewers. If you send emails or whatnot, people can.
Yes, definitely. Why don't you email me the links, and when we upload this video to our site and to our social media platforms, we'll include those links for people to use. Well, we're at the 30-minute. Oh, go ahead, Doug. Last.
No, I was going to mention, since Melissa mentioned the website, there is a digital version of the passport there as well. So if people can't get it at their heritage site or their library, they can download it, and there's actually a digital version that runs on the phone as well. So we want people to be able to get that wherever they can.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Doug. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you all for watching this week's version of the State of Greater Western New York Report. We're here every Thursday at noon and rebroadcast again at 1:30 on Sunday and on our YouTube and Facebook platforms. I'm Chris Carosa saying bye-bye for now.